James, first question, as always, in less than 10 words, how would you explain what you do for customers and the benefits?
I help customers analyze their business and map out the journey to where they want to go.
Okay, I think that's the best we've had so far, isn't it? In terms of less than 10 words. And so in terms of your target audience, who is your target audience in terms of type of business and job role?
My target audience is the chief executive of a mid-sized company that is frustrated with their present planning methods and looking for something better. What that looks like in practice is quite a large, if you research on Google, there's a fairly large body of opinion which says anything from 60 to 92% of strategic plans are never effectively implemented. So I'm looking for the client who has spent money developing a strategic plan and now it's sitting on the shelf. And I will help them to analyze their current situation and then map out the journey to get where they want to go. That's applicable to any industry. I've got experience across the whole gamut: financial services, contracting, consulting, construction, mining, all over the place over the years. My ideal customer, as I say, is one who's looking for something different.
Okay. And let's imagine at the end of this session, everybody spends 10 minutes or 15 minutes trying to do something to help you out. What's that one thing do you think that the rest of the group here could do help you with your biggest challenge?
Well, my biggest challenge is to find leads, and anyone can help me to find leads in that range that I've just spoken about would be most gratefully received.
Okay. Before I turn it over to the rest of the group for feedback and questions, do you have a funny or interesting fact or story to share, either on a personal or to do with business?
Yeah, I think several of you have been through the StratSnap process with me. In fact, probably about 2/3 of you have been through the StratSnap process with me. The interesting thing about that is it's got some, what I am presumptuous enough to call clever psychology in the process. And that all sort of came together accidentally. It was not that I sat down and said, how can I get maximum engagement by my delegate group and things like that. It just flowed and came together, and it works remarkably well. I mean, I've never had a misfire with the method.
Okay. All right. That's pretty much it. It's a 5 to 10 minutes with 5 minutes of kind of open forum questions. So does anybody have any questions or any suggestions for James? Any feedback?
I'll just ask James, what processes or what have you put into place, or have you put anything into place with regards to nurturing those people that who've got interest? I suppose it's kind of it's educating really, rather than nurturing. You're actually educating people about what you do, how you do it, but you're also sort of connecting with their pains, their problems and what have you, I suppose, as well. Are you doing any activities with regards to that?
My biggest challenge is to actually connect with the people that I've just spoken to. And I've been doing a lot of networking. I've probably been to 25 different network groups over the last 9 months. Just signed up with the Chairman's Network and your partnerships and a couple of others. And the trouble is that and that's the whole reason why we've got Maxis, isn't it? Is that our target audience is not going to those networking groups. So I signed up with Sales Navigator just over a month ago. I put in quite a lot of effort there. I'm spending half an hour to an hour every night on LinkedIn. And the challenge there, and I've got a big portfolio of connections. I've got nearly 30,000 connections in LinkedIn. I went through a phase years ago where I just connected with anybody I could find, but I did a search last night, and I've got over 1,000 CEOs that I'm connected with. But the challenge, and I've been tentatively putting my toe in the water and approaching people, but the challenge is to get the message right, so that, because what I found is, if I went through a period where I was reading each profile and commenting on something specific in the profile. I see that you've achieved this. Could you tell me more about it? Almost 100% failure rate, no responses. And the conclusion I reached is those people are not interested in having a conversation. So then I've tried a couple of other messages to try and get attention, but I'm still working at that. Yesterday, I contacted 3 organizations that do done-for-you LinkedIn services. So I'm exploring getting somebody to do the messaging for me, because that's not my strong point. But really appreciate any help that anybody can give me, because it's an uphill battle at the moment, to be honest.
James, are you niching in any particular sector?
Annalise, I'm not, simply because the method is completely agnostic of industry, and I play a completely facilitative role. So my strength is the psychology of the process rather than than a particular industry.
But if I can add to that, James, Annalise's benefit there, because it's a very numbers-driven process, I think it appeals more to people who are numerate than creative types, perhaps, because there's it's a very structured and methodical approach. So I think it's more likely to appeal to people like James, engineers and people in industry who are numerate rather than advertising professionals, perhaps. That's my view.
I think also on that, you've got people who may feel that they're admitting that their planning and execution of the plan has not been flawless, shall we say. You're up against personalities as well.
Mm-hmm.
So admitting defeat in your organisation is not great. So I brought someone in because my previous work didn't work is a tricky thing. So there's ways around it, of course, but I think that will also be in the mix, I think, of when you may approach and who you approach, of course.
I think the challenge, John and Paul, is that I'm not even getting that far at the moment.
Okay.
Just one bit of feedback on the messaging, James. Building on from what Annalisa said, I think even though what you covers a broad target,
Mm-hmm.
the more you speak the language of the individual sector or the individual owner, the more they're likely to respond. And I've had this before when I've talked about customers to a dental practice, and they said they're not customers, they're patients, and they don't like
Mm-hmm.
the word customers. They just don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you use the wrong terminology or you're
Mm-hmm.
broad, you get less results. But if you're more specific and you speak their language, so it may be worth segmenting and going after a specific, tech companies, for example, and then focusing on them, and then changing the wording to focus on a different segment.
Mm.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Karen.
I didn't mean to talk over anything. I was saying that I've kind of been learned, through also trying, because I can serve lots of people, lots of organisations, but what I've learned is that the people have been drilling into me niche, and the more specific and the more narrow you make it, the more you're going to speak to people. Like, you try to speak to a broad audience, you speak to nobody really understands what you do. But if you try to speak to one audience, like I'm trying to speak to STEM now because of the work that I've done in STEM over the last year. And so I can take that experience and say I've had success with a couple of managers working in PPE, and I find that my skills are really suiting this audience, because I'm relational and they tend to be brilliant but not relational. So if you can maybe think about an industry or sector that you are best suited to, that you have experience of,
Mm-hmm.
You understand their problems, you really do understand what they go through, then you might have more success at speaking to that at getting people to respond to you.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, it's still early for me, my brain isn't working quite, not particularly articulate this morning, but